In an earthquake, Su Baozhu traveled back to ancient times and became a broom star in Huaihua Village, who had married 8 times but still couldn't get married. She also recruited a son-in-law who came to her door. If this woman hits Kefu, in a few days, that little Lang Jun will surely die in the underworld. Stay away from her, this person has a negative impact. Be careful of bad luck if you approach her. As a result, the little man with half his life left was getting better and better in spirit. The originally poorest Su family built a tall wooden house, which was painted shiny. Millennium ginseng belongs to their family. The big wild boar belongs to their family. High-quality fox skin from their family. The flower goddess of faith has left her home. Su Baozhu sat in the yard, gazing at the mountains and rivers he had built, and sighed with joy that his little life was becoming more and more hopeful. The little Xiangong who was picked up shouted at people, "My wife is not a broom star. She is a little koi in the sky, saving lives." Su Baozhu smiled and waved his hand, "Keep a low profile." Keywords of the novel. Countryside delicate xiaofu wife no pop-ups, Countryside delicate xiaofu wife complete collection download, Countryside delicate xiaofu wife latest chapter reading. Chapter 1. The Broom Star Gets Married. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 1. The Broom Star Gets Married. Su Baozhu is a famous broom star in Huaihua Village. Born to the death of my mother, at the age of 5, my father broke his leg. At the age of GG, I even married 8 times without getting married. The engaged family either had the groom suddenly die or had no family members. This coincidence, 2 misunderstandings, 8 consecutive times no one dares to gamble their own lives. She remained like this, at the age of 18. Su Laohan is someone who loves his daughter, but he doesn't give up. A few days ago, he chose another marriage for the girl. This time it's done. Recruited a doorstep son-in-law. The wedding banquet was lively, and people from 10 miles and 8 villages were invited over. But the excitement didn't end, and new troubles arose. At this moment, the last household in the east of Huaihua Village. In the midst of lantern decorations, several people who were out of place with the environment burst in. It's Chen Daming from the neighboring Lotus Village, along with his wife He and 2 brothers Chen Erming and Chen Xiaoming. This is a wealthy family from the neighboring village, relying on a nephew working in the government. They are used to bullying in their own village, but they didn't expect it to cause trouble here. Old man Su felt a headache at the sight of this person, but he still got up and walked up with a limp. Daming brothers, as you can see, today is the day when Baoante gets married. She got married, so I'm afraid she won't be able to. Who wants to ask your broom girl? I came today to ask you to return the things. Returning something. Old man Su was confused and lowered his body to please. I don't know where the Daming brothers started saying this. Where did it start? Chen Daming snorted coldly and pushed him away. Of course, it started more than a month ago. He turned around, with a high and proud expression, he said to the villagers. Ladies and gentlemen of Huaihua Village, to be honest, more than 10 days ago, my old lady was seriously ill and asked my wife to come over with a lot of things to treat him. He didn't know what to do, didn't go and didn't say anything, and even left behind an ancestral jade bracelet. It was a life-saving talisman for my wife. Without it, my wife's health is deteriorating and she is only breathing a sigh. Do you think I should come over to show her to others? Get it? Chen Daming was convinced that Su Laohan dared not reveal the true reason why they came that day, so he raised his head and began to confuse black and white. Old Su, is this true? Someone in the crowd asked. I haven't taken it before, said Mr. Su, I've never seen any jade bracelets before. Chen Daming said, you haven't seen it before. You should have quietly pawned it for sale. Otherwise, as a cripple, you wouldn't have such great ability to buy such a thick dowry for a girl. Speaking of this, the villagers of Huaihua Village who originally believed in the Su family's father and daughter also began to feel uneasy. This old man Su is notorious for being poor. When he separated his family and built this courtyard, he relied on the support of the villagers. He only paid it back 2 years ago, but this time, it was only half a month. The embroidered wedding dress on Su Baozhu's body, the 7-ring silver bracelet, and the food on this table were all burning money. If he hadn't taken them, how could he have done it? Old Su, we all know that you care about your daughter's heart, but this cannot be done like this. Our village has never made such a joke before. If you take it, you should return it to them as soon as possible. This is a matter of life and death, and holding it is not kind. It's just that taking something from the elderly to save lives will bring retribution. I really can't tell you're such a person. We really misjudge you in our daily lives. Everyone forced Su Laohan to hand over the jade bracelet with every word you said. This honest man has never seen these things before. He is speechless and only hangs his head, his sick legs hanging down time and time again. He clumsily explains, I really didn't take them. The things on Miss Bao's body are all accumulated bit by himself. Did you save it? Chen Daming laughed heartily. How much money do you have to save? I remember you charged 2 copper coins for 1 medical treatment. Can you tell me how long did you save up to have these? Chen Daming's voice suddenly rose up, if you take it, then you take it. I still don't admit it. If you don't admit it, let's go to the county to see the officials. Everything will be judged by the county officials. Hand it over, old Su. We know you were momentarily confused. If you were to face a lawsuit, it wouldn't be that simple. The villagers seem to be thinking for their father and daughter, but in reality, they are also being aggressive and fueling the Chen family's pride. Previously, Su Baozhu was a timid girl, especially under the guise of being a broom star. She dared not speak much, but now Su Baozhu has changed her mind. She is from the 21st century and has no good temper. Every small matter has to be debated, let alone in this situation. Seeing that the groom who had just fainted in the wedding hall couldn't wake up for a while, he got up and walked out. Uncle Chen of the Chen family said that my father had taken care of Grandma Chen's jade bracelet. I don't know if there is any evidence to prove it. He slandered people's innocence with empty words and ruined the reputation of my father and Huaihua Village. Not only did you report to the government, but also the people of Huaihua Village. Otherwise, it will spread in the future. How can our village establish itself in the county? Who else dares to marry a good girl? Her words were a reminder to everyone who had been watching the excitement just now. Chen Daming has been saying that he has taken it, but he has not provided any evidence of his ugly physique. Su Laohan is indeed poor, and the specifications of this wedding do seem to exceed expectations, but that cannot be considered evidence. It is normal for him to dote on his daughter and give her the best wedding possible, so naturally this is not excessive. For a moment, the situation reversed, and everyone shouted for evidence from the Chen family, otherwise they would have taken their people out of Huaihua Village. Evidence, that's naturally my wife. Chen Daming pushed He Shi and said, tell them where exactly did the thing go. He cried whenever he said, and immediately burst into tears, that day, my second mother and I came to our door with things to ask for Dr. Su's help. We also told our husband that as long as we could be cured, we would definitely pay a lot of money to thank him. Dr. Su said we should first see sincerity, so I took out this bracelet. He was so excited that he couldn't let go. Later, his maid came back and kicked us out indiscriminately. After returning, we couldn't find the things. It wasn't who took them, it wasn't you. Joke. Only your Chen family and my dad know about what happened that day. You can say whatever you want. Suspicion has always existed. If you want to say that, I even said that a few days ago when I went up the mountain to collect medicine, I saw you and your village's Lu Ergu sneaking around. Do you two still have something else to say? Ha ha ha. Chen Daming, isn't there really something? You can't even keep an eye on your own daughter. In law. You despicable girl, how dare you falsely accuse my mother of innocence? I'll fight with you. End of this chapter. Chapter 2. Woolly Fan. You are listening at Novel Full. Audio. Chapter 2. Woolly Fan. He was about to run towards Su Baozhu, waving his teeth and claws. She had anticipated this and was not in a hurry. She didn't even hide at all and stood there, as if waiting specifically for he sure to come and attack her. Everyone was startled by the sight, their hearts rising to their throats. Her aunt, Baoya, is still young. Your adult has a lot of knowledge, why bother to have the same understanding as her, someone in the crowd advised. However, the infuriated he sure couldn't listen and remained determined to act alone. The dark and thick hands and eyes were about to pinch Su Baozhu's neck. Su Baozhu lowered her head to take a glance, and when she was only an inch away from her, she leaned slightly. He didn't have time to stop his steps, but due to inertia, he fell directly to the ground and ate a mouthful of firecracker ash. You despicable girl, you dare to plot against me. He cursed. Su Baozhu shrugged nonchalantly and said, everyone has eyes and can see. I'm standing here motionless, you threw it yourself. It's none of my business. If it weren't for you, All right. Chen Daming saw that the situation was not right, so he quickly stopped he sure and asked someone to help her up. With both hands behind her and a sweep of his eyebrows, he walked towards Su Baozhu. One code. I won't talk to you about your defamation of my wife's innocence for now. We are here today to seek an explanation and return the jade bracelet, otherwise we will meet with the government. Su Baozhu strode over, lifted the hem of her skirt, sat down to the side, and said, since so many people are here today, let's have a good chat and see who should give an explanation. What do you want to do? Chen Daming's wife, he sure, was already feeling guilty and took 2 steps back when she heard this. You said that jade bracelet is your old lady's life-saving talisman. Where do you usually put it? Nature is in her hands, Chen Daming said naturally. Since it's in her hands, why not go find her and bring it to us? Didn't you just say that as a token of gratitude, I would like to invite your father to seek medical treatment? Nonsense. The villagers all know my father's rules for treating and saving people. He always only has 2 copper coins and never collects too much. How can we use this precious jade bracelet? We need you to break it off from a seriously ill elderly person, or in other words, your ultimate goal has never been to invite my father to treat his illness. Baoya, it's not treating a disease, why is that? Asked a middle-aged woman in the village. This question perfectly aligns with Su Baozhu's intention. She opened her big round eyes and looked innocent, saying, I didn't hear it very clearly either. I only knew that when I came back that day, I heard this Chen daughter. In law tell my dad that she has a lazy child and wants me to become a daughter. In law. What else did she say? Don't look at the Chen family being led by an old lady now, that old lady is no longer good. The Chen family will be hers sooner or later, and my luck is not good. When I get married, I will just kill the old lady. When she becomes the head of the family, she can share a sum of money with me. Everyone knows that my dad is an honest person, and this kind of heartless thing. She definitely won't do it, that's why we kicked her out. Chen Daming just heard about Lu Ergu and was filled with anger. Now he heard about it again, but his anger was burning. He suddenly forgot what he was supposed to do and grabbed his collar. You stinky mother. In law, asking you to find someone to marry your son and pass on the family line. You're so lucky. You dare to curse my grandma and plan for our Chen family's property. How audacious. As soon as the words were spoken, everyone present understood what was going on. The old lady from the Chen family was seriously ill and wanted to pick someone to take care of her, but her son was a fool. Not one of the girls from a good family was willing, so she turned her mind to the lonely father and daughter. Although she was poor, she had the backbone and did not agree. She also chose a marriage partner for her daughter and quickly got married. The Chen family was furious and deliberately came to cause trouble. If you want to fight or scold, it's your household chores. You should go home and solve them yourself. Today they are having a wedding, so don't come and get unlucky, said the village chief. Pooh, you think we're rare. This Broom star thing, even after marrying 8 times, can't get married. I don't believe it. We can still get married this time. We haven't seen the groom yet. Don't it be that the groom died again today, good things turn into bad things. She's the wife of the Chen family, don't go too far in your life. No matter how good the girl is, it won't be your turn to curse people like this on a happy day. Yo, isn't this her second uncle? You've all split up, and you kicked out your father and daughter. What kind of person are you pretending to be now? You. Uncle Su was so angry that his face turned red and his neck was thick. He was about to hit someone, but he was stopped by his wife on the side. He had no choice but to give up and change his words, warning, I miss your wife's family. I won't argue with you. Hurry up and take your family and get out of the territory of Huaihua Village. Pooh. A worthless thing. During the argument, only an aging voice sounded. They have bullied our family, but you dare not speak yet. Everyone looked up and saw that it was Mrs. Su. The old man had graying hair and almost no flesh on his face, only skin and bones left. However, his aura was fierce and his demeanor remained the same as before. A few words immediately made the Su family's second son bow his head. End of this chapter. Chapter 3. The Domineering Mrs. Su. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3. The Domineering Mrs. Su. The children of the Su family have split up, but they have no blood relationship with my old lady. I'll leave my words here. Today is my granddaughter's big day. Whoever dares to cause any trouble here, just step over my old lady's body first. The old lady is 70 and 60 years old this year, and she usually relies on medicine to support herself. When she gets excited, her body cannot stop trembling. The wooden crutch landed heavily on the ground, barely stabilizing his figure. The shaky body, as if about to collapse in the next second, frightened the Chen family. They had planned to make some more noise, but were also afraid of accidents. In the end, they had no choice but to leave in a disheveled manner. A farce ended, and the audience dispersed one after another, leaving only the Su family. Auntie. Old man Su stepped forward and helped her. Mrs. Su gave him a white glance and shook his hand, saying, Don't call me auntie. I don't have an unfilial son like you. She was infuriating to marry her granddaughter in such a hurry, and she didn't even inform her. Su Laohan was ashamed and lowered his head. Grandma. Su Baozhu has an impression of this old lady, who is one of the few people in the Su family who treats them well except for the old man Su. The leader of the Su family followed the old lady over and didn't say a word just now. Now that everyone has dispersed and there is no danger, he walked up and stood next to the old lady Su, pointing at the old lady Su and saying, This is too outrageous. Even if we split the family, we are still one family. Mother, and elderly are still your elders, your parents who gave birth to you and raised you. How can you make decisions about the marriage of the precious girl without telling her? Su Baozhu looked at her uncle. It's really interesting. I always find her and Su Laohan unlucky, and I don't even allow them to pass through his house. Now, I'm putting on a show of being a big brother, pretending to be innocent and not knowing anything. It's like a few days ago, I kicked someone out of his house and said it's your own family's business. The people who don't need to inform me are not like him. It's simply bullying honest people. Uncle, I remember my dad came to talk to you and said he wanted to discuss with his grandmother. What did you say to your aunt? He said we've split up, and it's none of your business. Don't come to your house to bring bad luck. The Su family leader, who was exposed, couldn't hold his pride and blushed to the bottom of his neck. He became angry and said, "You little girl, how could you talk to elders? You're not cultured." "I'm sorry, my mother died right after I was born, no one taught me." "You. Alright, where's the grandson son.in.law? Call him out to take a look." Mrs. Su couldn't bear to watch any more and interrupted them, speaking to Si Zhu Yun. Let's take a closer look." "I'm sure we won't be able to see you at any time," said Jiao, the second daughter.in.law, happily. "Second daughter.in.law, what do you mean by this?" Su Laohan didn't want to worry about these things at first, but Jiao Shi's words were too much, and he couldn't help but cold his face. "Our elder brother Yun's body and bones are a bit weak, but there is no major problem. I am a doctor myself, and I still don't know. Is there anything wrong with it? Everyone has their eyes and can see that I instigated the incident of fainting in Shitang. Old man Su feels exhausted and doesn't know how to fight back." Su Baozhu was about to speak, but the second son of the Su family intercepted her first. "Alright, let's just say a few words less." He put down his pipe in his hand and said with a reasonable expression, "Auntie, if she wants to see it, let her see it. On this joyful day, why do you say these things?" "I'm sorry." Jiao became angry as soon as she heard this. "What you said is quite easy. If you want to see it, you can see it. If you pass the illness and come back with bad luck, it's not our bad luck. This precious girl is trying to get married, while Lon hasn't yet. After this incident, if there are any problems in the future and you really can't get married, you are responsible. As a father, you know that touching your upper and lower lips doesn't know anything, useless. I said, don't come, don't come. I insist on coming over and taking a look. That's it now." Jiao became more and more angry as he spoke, and he directly grabbed the ear of the second son of the Su family. Sigh. Su Baozhu rubbed her eyebrows helplessly. This was not the first time she had seen such a scene. Every time she passed by Uncle Su's house, she could always see such scenes from time to time. Sometimes it was for the child, sometimes it was for the work in the field, and sometimes it was just for a few eggs. In short, even a trivial matter can be a big deal in their house, and the whole village knows about it. Alright, what's all the noise about? If you want to see it, just look, if you don't, go back. Mrs. Su couldn't bear to look any more and shouted loudly, shaking the wooden crutch. The commotion frightened everyone present, and the scene instantly quieted down. The leader of the Su family gave the two a few glances, and Uncle Su quickly left Su Baozhu's house with his wife as if fleeing. When he left, he didn't forget to bring the remaining meat and peanut candy from the banquet. As soon as she left, Zhu Yun walked out of the room. End of this chapter. Chapter 4. Eccentric People. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4. Eccentric People. Zhu Yun has a wound on his ankle. The fabric of these hemp shoes is not soft enough, and he pulled the wound with just one action, so he always walks with a limp. Mrs. Su couldn't help but frown as she looked at someone with a weak and helpless appearance, still limping. Is this the person you found for Baoya? You see how he looks like he's going to pass both steps, even more empty than my old lady. Miss Bao has followed him, how can we live our lives in the future? The elderly don't have so many taboos, they don't have a door on their mouth, they can say whatever they think, and regardless of whether Zhu Yun is uncomfortable in his ears, he may have other thoughts. Grandma. Su Baozhu muttered to herself that the old lady had a sharp mouth. She walked over to her side, helped someone sit on the main seat, and turned her gaze to Zhu Yun, giving him a wink. He had a calm demeanor on his face and didn't seem to take it to heart. He stood up straight and gave a formal courtesy to others. I have seen an elderly person. Reaching out without hitting the smiling person. His attitude made it a bit difficult for Mrs. Su to perform well, but in order to maintain her elder status, she still raised her voice and pretended to be a threat, saying, don't mess with your elegant things. My old lady can't understand it either. Let me ask you, where are you from and what does your family do? Have you ever been married? After getting married, can you treat our girls well? It's truly a connection between ancient and modern times. Wherever you go, you can't escape this elder's questioning of household registration. Su Baozhu has also asked these questions before, but apart from saying that he has never married before, he seems reluctant to mention anything else. But judging from his speech and behavior, he should be a scholar, but it is unknown why he came to Yunzhou and made himself so embarrassed, with extremely heavy shackles on his feet. She didn't care about these either. It was just an accidental encounter, and out of the kindness of a doctor, she couldn't let it go and brought it back. Her original intention was to immediately send someone away when they were healed, so naturally she wouldn't ask too much. If it weren't for the Chen family's tight pressure and no other way to use this temporary measure, the two wouldn't have any other connections. Su Baozhu looked at the person, his face pale and his two thick black sword eyebrows furrowed slightly, looking very painful. Grandma, why are you asking so many questions? He's my person now, and if I don't let him go, he won't be able to run. Whatever. Su Baozhu tried to smooth things out. You girl, are you young? I'm not doing it all for you. Su Baozhu smiled, hit old Mrs. Su's shoulder, and said in a charming voice, then you can do it for me again. Don't ask again. Look at him, he is so pathetic. He is injured and can't stand steadily. He will also accept your interrogation like checking registered residence. If anyone can't stand it. Tomorrow, the village still doesn't know how to arrange me, then I will really become a broom star. Nobody dares to marry. If he wants to marry, he can only marry a fool like the Chen family. Do you have the heart? The words touched Mrs. Su's heart, and her face gradually softened. She let out a long sigh and said, well, since we have already gotten married, let's live a good life in the future. You girl, although your luck is not good, you are a quick-witted person. If we work hard together, we won't be able to make it through too much. As she spoke, she untied the silver bracelet from her hand and handed it to Zhu Yun. This is my old lady's gift for you to get married. Remember every word Miss Bao said for you today, and treat her well in the future. Otherwise, even if I die, I won't let you go. As people get older, they really love to mention the word death frequently. But this word really sounds particularly harsh. Grandma, stop talking nonsense. You have a strong body and can live to be 100 years old. The old lady's toothless mouth burst into laughter and said, it's you, this girl, who has a sweet mouth and has been sick for a while. It's considered enlightenment. Previously, Su Baozhu was always very insecure and timid due to the reputation of being a broom star. She didn't dare to speak up, and even showed goodwill towards Mrs. Su's intergenerational relatives. She was also concerned about the face of the two uncles and aunts of the Su family and never wanted to respond. These old ladies are all aware of it. When she was younger, she didn't care about it. But now that she is older and not as old as before, she takes turns living with her two sons. People seem to value her on the surface, but secretly think she is an old and immortal person who lives too long and wastes rice. She has no way to be the head of these two families, so she naturally dares not act too openly, so as not to create any more resentment among the families. As she grows old, she always hopes to be safe and stable. If it weren't for this time that it affects her granddaughter's lifelong life, perhaps she would have remained silent like before, until she carried this worry, she would have remained silent like before. Heart enters the coffin. The Su family leader's face instantly turned cold as he looked at the bracelet. This was given by the older generation when Mrs. Su and her husband got married. The craftsmanship was very rough, but it was solid, much heavier than the various styles currently sold on the market. Moreover, with a certain year, it became a family heirloom. After so many years, several brothers have been looking forward to it, but to their surprise, she did not give it to their biological children. Instead, she gave it to an outsider who had just met for less than a day. The old lady's heart has shifted to her shoulder. End of this chapter. Chapter 5. Promise with One's Lives. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5. Promise with One's Lives. Su Baozhu and Zhu Yun escorted Mrs. Su out of the door, and the family finally breathed a sigh of relief. She turned around and helped Zhu Yun, saying, "Just now, my grandmother said, don't take it to heart. Let's stick to our agreement and not register with the government. After a while, your injury will heal. If you want to leave, you can leave without being affected." Zhu Yunding looked at her calmly and said solemnly, "I remember your and uncle's life-saving kindness in my heart. I will repay them with grass and a ring, and I will not cross rivers or demolish bridges." Puff. Su Baozhu listened happily and said, "You ancient people always had interesting speeches. You always tied grass and carried rings, and promised each other with your own bodies. So, this life is so long, I don't know how many people you will meet and what kind of kindness you will encounter. It's hard to say that every time you meet someone, you have to marry them as a reward." Zhu Yun's ears turned red to the back of his ear when she said it, and he awkwardly scratched his head. Su Baozhu casually said that he had no intention of making things difficult for him, let alone being conflicted. Seeing him blush, he wisely shifted the topic and said, "Let's go in and eat something. I'm starving to death." This marriage was arranged in a hurry. Although Su Laohan had 8 experiences, he didn't have time to complete everything. As for her, it was the first time that the young lady got into the sedan chair. Without anyone to help, the two of them were busy and disoriented. From morning till now, she had not eaten much and couldn't withstand the iron beating. Zhu Yun nodded and responded, "Okay." The two of them turned back, and Su Laohan had already packed up almost everything. The food was also prepared, which were all simple dishes without much oil or water. The only ones that looked decent were a plate of braised pork belly, an egg soup, and a plate of fried peanuts. This is the maximum limit that Su Laohan can achieve. On weekdays, whenever there is a happy event in the village, it is the same. However, it is different to invite the village's most respected elders to sit at the main table, accept the new person's worship, and bless them. Su Baozhu, who has been married 8 times but has not been married out, was a feudal superstition in ancient times. She was afraid that she would bring bad luck and affect the feng shui of her family. No one was willing to do this, which is why she worshipped Su Laohan. "Come on, eat more." Su Laohan put a piece of meat into her bowl and put another piece in Zhu Yun's place. "From now on, we will be a family. If you need anything, you can tell me and Bao Maiden. As long as I can do it, I will definitely do it for you and never let anyone underestimate us. Let's go." For Su Laohan, even if his daughter repeatedly stated that this marriage was not a plan, it would only kill the Chen family's heart. What should be done in the future is still the same, and it is irrelevant for men to marry and women to marry. In the eyes of the elderly, how can this marriage be fake? I have worshipped heaven and earth, my parents, and even the flower god believed in by the people of Huaihua Village. He is my son.in.law. Especially at this critical moment, marrying a girl from his own family solved their family's difficulties, and that was the great benefactor of the Su family. Su, the old man, had great respect and gratitude for others. Zhu Yun looked at the meat in his bowl, unable to move his chopsticks for a long time. During this period of time, he has been recuperating here, which can be considered as a clear view of the environment of this house. The father and daughter lived in poverty, and they couldn't afford to eat this meat for half a year. However, for the sake of his daughter and himself, Su Laohan was very willing to sacrifice his money. He not only used all his savings to make a silver lock and a 7-ring silver bracelet, but also left the last 5 cents of silver. He bought 2 pounds of meat and a few packets of peanut candy. He just wants to give people a good reputation and not let the villagers see Su Baozhu's jokes again. Ordinary families still have warmth, but why don't you eat? It's not to your taste, Su Laohan asked with concern, thinking it was not done well when he saw him hesitating to use his chopsticks. No, that's great. Su Baozhu always felt that this person was not as simple as he appeared on the surface, weak and unable to take care of himself. During his time here, he didn't like to talk and often stared in the north direction, not knowing what he was thinking. The deeper I delved deeper, the more I realized that my father's decision was too bold, and I became even more absurd, even agreeing. Most likely. Beauty can deceive people. Zhu Yun felt a bit embarrassed when he was stared at, but when he spoke it out, he was afraid of hurting the girl's self-esteem. He only blushed and lowered his head to grab the rice from the bowl. Su Baozhu is not a kind-hearted man or a faithful woman. Seeing his appearance, he had even more malicious thoughts. Although he knew he was embarrassed, he didn't shy away and deliberately looked at him directly, teasing people. Su Laohan was very pleased to see his daughter's unremarkable appearance, but he still pretended to cough twice to help Zhu Yun out. Cough, dear girl, come and have some meat. Thank you, Dad. Su Baozhu took it, but poked it into Zhu Yun's bowl. You're weak, eat more, it'll heal quickly. Zhu Yun looked at Su Laohan with resentment and nodded with a smile, here you are, girl. You can eat. The three of them were eating without any hesitation. By the time they finished eating, it was already dark and a few of them had not gone out again. The family was poor, so they had to save on the oil lamps. There was nothing to worry about. Su Laohan had already tidied up early and then lay down. Su Baozhu helped Zhu Yun into the room and helped him sit down on the edge of the bed. Just sit down and I'll go to the kitchen and boil some water to wash you, so you can change the dressing. Zhu Yun felt a bit awkward and said, no need. Su Baozhu was somewhat dissatisfied with his attitude of not taking his injuries seriously, and said unhappily, your wound is deep. If you don't handle it properly, it will fall into the root of the disease. You may walk with a limp, but in the cold winter, spring snow, wind and rain in the future, you will have to endure some of them. Zhu Yun fell silent again, revealing an expression that she couldn't understand or explain clearly. Su Baozhu thought that one of her words had hurt him, but apologizing was not her forte. She just ran away like a rabbit, feeling disheartened. When she returned carrying the boiled water, Zhu Yun sat by the window, looking up at the sky, unsure of what he was thinking. Come and change the dressing first, she said. Zhu Yun turned his head slowly upon hearing the sound, and the cold moonlight shone on his cheeks. A thin and emaciated body with a pale, bloodless face. Suddenly, it reminded Su Baozhu of a line that his teacher had read in a literature class before. The state of mind is filled with two dimples of sorrow, and the body is covered in a disease. Zhu Yun's face turned red as she stared at her naked eyes. Xia Yun leaned up, turned his head, and stumbled over, dragging his sick leg. Su Baozhu took a step forward to support him, but when he sat on the couch, he felt embarrassed again and refused to extend his feet. I'll do it myself, Zhu Yun said. Line. Su Baozhu didn't force himself. When he was seriously ill, people had seen that his leg was covered in numerous scars, and it's unclear how it was caused. He is a scholarly person who always demands dignity. Now that he can move freely, he is unwilling to be manipulated by her like before. Here's the wiping pad, where's the medicine? She placed the pounded herbs within his reach. Remember to apply it, I'm right outside. If there's anything I can't do, call out and I'll come in and help you. End of this chapter. Chapter 6. Visiting Husband. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6. Visiting Husband. Su Baozhu went out to tidy up for herself and then returned. As a result, when someone looked up, their waist couldn't bend down and they couldn't reach the wound on their foot. He overestimated himself. He not only had injuries to his ankles, but also to his waist. He couldn't bend too much. Su Baozhu originally wanted to mock him, but when she looked up at his pitiful and sorrowful expression, she choked on his lips. "No one has ever asked me to serve you like this before, but you should have picked up your stool," Su Baozhu said as he drugged him. Zhu Yun lowered his head in shame. "I'm really sorry for making you suffer." Su Baozhu didn't take it seriously. "You are a patient, I am a doctor, I should. Besides, you did me and my dad a big favor today. Compared to that, it's nothing." Su Laohan built a total of 4 earthen houses, one for medicinal herbs, one for her to live in, one for the kitchen, and one for himself to live in. Zhu Yun originally lived in the herbal medicine room. There wasn't much bed there, just a simple bed made of hay. It was okay a few days ago, but it's already autumn now. If he sleeps there again, he's afraid that his old injury hasn't healed and new illnesses will be added. What Su Laohan means is that her house is even their new house. Today when they got married, so many people were looking at her, and she also came here. But now that the night is quiet, both of them are facing some difficulties. "I'll go live next door," Zhu Yun took the initiative to say. "Daddy has collected all the hay. Where did you go to sleep? Just lie on the ground." "That can't be." He looked at the bed, with big red blankets all over it. The whole room was decorated neatly, with a pair of red candles lit on the table. "It's okay, anyway, when you fainted today, you already lay down. Let's stay here," Su Baozhu said, lifting his hand to the side to get the blanket. "This is your bed, this is my bed, and we don't disturb each other." Even so, Zhu Yun still felt that it was damaging to the reputation of the girl's family. He quickly refused, "The day is a helpless act, and I am awake at this moment. How can I do this?" He pretended to go out. "Come back." Su Baozhu grabbed him and pulled him back, the force getting stronger. The two of them collapsed on the bed, causing Zhu Yun's waist injury. He frowned in pain. "Do you think I'm willing? After all, we're faking our marriage, and I haven't slept in the same bed with any man before. It's always my fault." Zhu Yun blushed like a roasted eggplant, unsure of how to start a conversation. "The people in this village know that I have hired a husband to come and live in the same room. It's not necessary for you to stay in that herbal medicine house again. If anyone visits and sees me, they think my father and I are abusing you. That's really ruining my reputation, you stinky bookworm. You really behave properly and sit upright. We don't have to be confined to these forms either. I'm at a disadvantage. If you have any illness or pain in the middle of the night, I can help you in a timely manner." Zhu Yun has read so many books of sages, and at this moment, he cannot say a word in the face of these remarks. When Su Baozhu saw him not speaking, he thought he had agreed and took the initiative to divide the places. "You sleep inside while I sleep outside. Tomorrow, I have to wake up early to make breakfast for my dad and go up the mountain to pick herbs. It's more convenient." After speaking, he didn't wait for anyone to react. He lifted the person up and laid himself on the side. "Most likely, I was too tired and soon fell asleep." She slept soundly this night, but when she woke up, she felt quite embarrassed. She found herself crossing the boundary at some point and hanging her whole body on Zhu Yun. He has been taking medicine these days, and the smell of the medicine on his body is very strong. However, for those who are accustomed to smelling the medicine, they don't feel anything wrong, but rather feel at ease. That. Su Baozhu hesitated, trying to explain something, but looking at the situation, he was quite self-aware. "Well, I don't sleep well and I'm used to being alone." Zhu Yun nodded. Perhaps due to a guilty conscience, Su Baozhu felt that Zhu Yun did not believe her words. Under his simple and calm face, he thought to himself, "I see how you make up this." She quickly sat up from the person and said, "It's getting late, I'll go prepare breakfast." After speaking, he quickly ran out of the door. Zhu Yun stroked his still warm chest and glanced at the disappearing shadow at the door, couldn't help but chuckle softly. Daddy! Hey, get up! Old man Su hunched his body and was busy on the stove. Hearing the sound, he turned around to look at Su Baozhu and said, "Hurry up and tidy up, wash up and eat." Su Baozhu took the hot water that had already been cooked on the side and poured it into a wooden basin. Looking down, she saw the mud on Su's feet and said, "Daddy, have you gone out?" "Well, I went to offer incense to your aunt and tell her the news of your marriage." When Su Laohan talked about Su Baozhu's mother, his rough and wrinkled face, like the bark of an old tree, added a gentle smile, and his eyes, which had been tormented by life and chaotic, also had a radiance. "Why don't you call me one?" Su Baozhu looked outside at the gloomy and rainy day and complained, "The mountain road over there is difficult to walk. You said something will happen halfway, but what should we do?" Su Laohan laughed so hard that his eyes couldn't see him anymore. "There's not so much going on. I've been walking that road for over a decade, and even with my eyes closed, I can figure out how to walk. There's nothing on either side that's hard for me. Anyway, in the future, if you go further away, you'll have to take me with you. She is not familiar with the place here, so let the old man be the closest person. She really doesn't want anything to happen to anyone. How come I didn't realize you're so annoying before?" Old Su joked. Su Baozhu took away his handkerchief, poured water outside the house, and turned around, saying, "Do you think you should?" "Of course I should." Old man Su said, "Oh my, this reminds me of what happened when you were a child." He gestured with his hand, "Back then, you were such a little one who loved to stick to me and run after me every day." As he spoke, the person's smile dimmed. "But as I grew up, I no longer like to talk. There are many things that I don't like to talk to my dad about. Dad knows that you feel uneasy because you've heard all the rumors and gossip in the village, but—" "Oh my dad," Su Baozhu interrupted him, "it's nothing like that. It's just a child. When we grow up, there is always a sensitive period of youth, and we just don't like to talk." "What is the sensitive period of youth?" Su Baozhu realized that she had talked too much and didn't know how to explain it to him, so she decided to stagger the topic. "Let's go eat quickly, I'm already hungry." He picked up the plate and walked towards the main hall. Su Laohan looked at her back, lost in thought. End of this chapter. Chapter 7. The weather has changed. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7. The weather has changed. Just after finishing his meal, before he could tidy up, it started raining heavily. Su Baozhu had originally planned to go to the mountain to pick herbs, but he had to give up the situation for the time being. This autumn rain is gentle, not big, but it torments people very much. The Su family's dirt house has been around for many years and cannot withstand any wind and frost. Now that the rain is continuous, the dry grass on the roof has penetrated into the house, leaving a small hole in one corner of the main room. "Girl, bring the basin quickly," Su Laohan commanded. "Hey." Su Baozhu handed him a wooden basin and took another one himself, and the two of them worked together to live. The day really changes. Yesterday the sun was shining brightly, but today it's raining heavily. Su Baozhu rose while wiping the water stains on her face. Su Laohan looked at the dripping water in the basin and sighed, "This old house is always in trouble due to wind and rain. It seems that it's not feasible. Well, it's already autumn in the blink of an eye. I'm afraid there won't be fewer of these things. How about we find an opportunity to renovate it someday? If we build a better one this time, why don't we make it into a wooden house, Dad? The south is relatively humid, and the ground is always wet after a change of seasons. The bedding and clothes are also not easy to dry, so it's troublesome. It might be better if the wooden house is left empty and has one floor." Su Laohan sighed and said, "It's not that easy. Is Daddy worried about money?" "Not really," said Su Laohan. "It seems that the harvest in that area is not very good this year. The government even issued an official document stating that we need to pay 100 stones of grain. Recently, I have already notified everyone that we need to set aside 5 stones of grain for each household. Considering our situation, we only ask to keep 3 stones. If we renovate the house at this time, the village may think we intentionally don't want to pay the grain. Su Baozhu never thought about this issue. Is it like this in previous years? You're confused, girl. Didn't you take a stone before? You went with me to deliver it. Su Baozhu scratched her head and covered her embarrassment with a smile. I've been too tired lately, and my memory isn't very good. So why are there so many this year? Dad is not sure either. It seems like he's saying that the court has changed its head, but there are already many. Bang! A crisp sound. A porcelain bowl fell to the ground and instantly shattered into pieces. Su Baozhu and Su Laohan finally realized that Zhu Yun had been ignored by them for a long time. What's going on? Su Baozhu looked at her trembling hand. Did the wound get pulled? It's okay. Zhu Yun avoided her concerned gaze and said, I'm feeling a bit uncomfortable. I want to go rest for now. Is that okay? Su Baozhu glanced at the sky outside. Although the rain had decreased slightly, it was still raining, so she refused and said, let the rain rest. The injury on your foot can't withstand too much cold. Zhu Yun waved his hand and said, it's okay, it's just a few steps away. As he spoke, he stood up and wanted to leave. Su Baozhu suddenly pulled the person back and said, you are a doctor, and my father is a doctor. How deep is the wound on your wrist? You have seen bones. You haven't recovered well before. What are you doing now? I really don't want your leg anymore. Su Laohan put away his dry cigarette and looked serious. Baowench is also for your own good, so just listen to her, he said, cough, cough, cough. Zhu Yun was about to answer when he felt a discomfort in his throat, and then suddenly coughed. Su Baozhu patted his back and said, look at you, why are you still alone? In case something happens, how can my father and I handle it? Don't you have the intention to damage our reputation? Zhu Yun blushed with embarrassment at her words and lowered his head in silence. Su Baozhu saw that these words were effective and continued, just sit here and take care of anything. Zhu Yun did not continue to persist. The 3 of them sat in the hall, listening to the patter of rain. They chatted casually, but it was mostly Su Baozhu and Su Laohan talking, and Zhu Yun was just listening. He didn't take the initiative to express his opinions or talk about his past. The 2 knew his temperament and didn't force anyone. In the afternoon, the rain finally subsided, and Su Baozhu didn't stop her anymore. She helped people back to the house and after a few words of explanation, she tidied up and went out. Just as she left the village entrance, she ran into the Qian brothers and a few young people from the village. The big brother of the Qian family, Qian Cheng, half held his hand and crossed over his younger brother, blood dripping profusely, looking particularly penetrating. Su Baozhu frowned slightly and asked, what's wrong with this? Why is brother Qian so badly injured? Ah, don't mention it. Qian Jinchang let out a sigh and said, you just need to be here. Hurry up. Please invite your dad to come to my house. Okay. Su Baozhu gave up the idea of going up the mountain and hurriedly ran back home, taking Su Laohan to the Qian family. This is the only outdoor family with the surname in the village. As they are from outside, they are afraid of being kicked out at any time if they get upset, so they have been maintaining friendly relations with the villagers, including Su Baozhu and his daughter. When they were young, the only children in the Qian family were willing to play with Su Baozhu. The eldest son of the Qian family, Qian Cheng, often secretly touched the pancakes cooked by his own aunt to give her to eat. The 2 had a close relationship, but unfortunately, as they grew older, they gradually became estranged. After all, no family is willing to let their elderly child get married to someone who hasn't been married 8 times. How's it going, Brother Su? Is Ah-Cheng okay? Qian Mu asked anxiously. It's okay, I have put the dislocated shoulder back in place and the blood has stopped. I just need to rest for a while. Who? Upon hearing this, Qian Mu breathed a sigh of relief and said, Fortunately, you were there, otherwise we wouldn't know what to do. Su Lao Han waved his hand indifferently and said, We are all from the same village, and we should have helped each other. I happen to know some Qi Huang techniques, which is why I can help you. It's not worth mentioning. Qian Mu licked her lips and was moved to the point where she didn't know what to say. She turned around and returned to the room, went to the bottom of the bed cabinet, took out 10 copper coins, handed them to Mr. Su, and said, Big brother, I know your rules. This can be considered as a reward, and we also have some blessings for the wedding of Miss Bao. Qian's mother looked at Su Baozhu and said, Girl, don't argue with your aunt about the past. Su Baozhu knew that she was talking about the original owner and the elder brother of the Qian family. They were childhood sweethearts, and their thoughts were clear to both parents. However, it's okay to take care of them regularly. If she really marries a Broom star, Qian's mother naturally wouldn't dare to gamble, so she decided to stick to them and negotiate a marriage with Qian. That girl is from a distant village, and her family cannot bear to part with her. They will not marry her until after the new year. I don't remember much about the past, Auntie, don't take it to heart either. Upon hearing this, Qian Jin couldn't help but glance at his older brother. Qian Qing turned his head away as if he hadn't heard him, but in the moment he turned sideways, his face collapsed. By the way, what exactly did you go to? How could brother Qian get hurt? Su Baozhu shifted the topic and asked Qian Jin about his recent talent. A few days ago, we set a trap on the mountain. Today we went to harvest, but unexpectedly, a wild boar suddenly jumped out on the way down the mountain, and it rained again. We couldn't dodge. Big brother injured me just to protect me. Qian Jin said of this with a guilty expression on his face. Wild boar. Su Baozhu murmured, this is a good thing. End of this chapter. Chapter 8. Getting close to her is not a good thing. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8. Getting close to her is not a good thing. Ever since she found out there were wild boars on that mountain, Su Baozhu couldn't forget them. In this village, people usually raise sheep and cows for the sake of farming. Even if they are too old to do it, they have to sell it for a small amount of money and won't be used to make cooked food. In the countryside, if you want to eat meat, you usually go hunting, hunt wild rabbits, sparrows, and other animals. You don't know how to raise pigs because the cost is too high, time-consuming and laborious. The villagers know all the conditions and can't sell it. They can't eat it all for themselves, and they can't bear to let it go. When they really want to satisfy their cravings, it's only during the Chinese New Year or a happy event that they go to the county to buy some and use it as a facade. How can a little rabbit compare to a big wild boar? And now there is an additional patient at home, which is the time to supplement nutrition. Su Baozhu couldn't sit still as she thought, so she decided to go out and came to the Qian family again. The autumn harvest has come these days, and the eldest brother of the Qian family has injured his hand again. The Qian family seems to have lost a labor force, and the work in the fields has slowed down a lot. Most of the day's work has also disappeared, but one by one, they are sweating profusely. Qian Jin had just returned from his busy life in the field when he caught a glimpse of Su Baozhu walking over. He quickly welcomed him and asked, Baozhu, why did you come over? Let's take a look. Su Baozhu handed him the kettle in his hand and said, You've been working for so long, you're tired. Take a sip of water first. No need, no need. Qian Jin refused, afraid of any misunderstandings and hesitant to accept it. We're all home now. I'll just go in and have a drink later, he explained. Okay. Su Baozhu didn't insist either. He collected the water and hung it back on his waist, quickly getting to the point and saying, Ah Jin, you said your brother was injured because of that wild boar. Do you remember where it appeared? That's the part halfway up Taoji Mountain. Qian Jin didn't know what she meant by this question, but when she remembered the situation at the time, she still had lingering fear and reminded, that thing is really big and terrifying. It's crazy to go crazy. Sister Baozhu, you often go up the mountain to collect medicine, so be careful. Well, I know. Su Baozhu responded and said, is it possible that we can hunt it down so that everyone doesn't have to worry about it hurting people in the future? Qian Jin thought he had heard the wrong thing and said, Baozhu, are you not joking? Hunt down. Su Baozhu looked up with a firm gaze. Okay, I'll tell you the truth. Qian Jin sat down on the ridge in front of the door and said, actually, we already knew there were wild boars on that mountain. We used to set traps to catch them, but you can see the situation. Fortunately, my brother is strong enough to avoid that blow, otherwise it wouldn't be as simple as injuring one hand now. We 3 or 5 young and strong men can't handle it. I advise you really don't have this idea, so as not to suffer from reckless consequences. If I say I'll fight, will you help me? This is not a question of whether to help or not, you know, now my brother. I have a way, Su Baozhu interrupted him. I have a way, I can guarantee to hunt it down, but I really need your help. Although I know this is very dangerous, I remember the appearance of the giant wild boar. If we really hunt it down, even if we only take half of it, it will be enough for a family's food for several months. There is no need to worry about going to the county for the Chinese New Year. What's the solution? Fear is no match for heart palpitations, and the attitude towards money has softened. Su Baozhu approached his ear and told someone about his plan. Qian Jin frowned and said, is this really feasible? Give it a try. If we succeed, we'll make a profit. If we don't succeed, it won't catch up. Even if we run away, we won't lose. It seems like such a logic. Okay, but that thing is really big, I'm afraid we can't do it alone, Qian said. So what do you mean? Call on a few more people to help. Okay, then you go tell them. The young men and girls in this village often dislike her bad luck and are afraid that she will delay their marriage. She will not succeed if she goes, but she underestimates the taboos of the villagers towards her. Qian Jin explained to the Qian family's parents and went back from the fields. He gathered a few young people who had been playing well and told them about Su Baozhu's plan. However, as soon as they heard this, they immediately waved their hands and rejected it, saying, Ah Jin, you're crazy. Didn't you see your elder brother's example there? How dare you agree to her words? That's right, we were so unlucky not to bring her with us that day. We couldn't take it off and got injured all over. If we really go with her, we might even lose our lives there. Ah Jin, it's not that we don't want to, it's just that there's really no need to take this risk. You're still young. If something really happens, how can we marry a wife in the future? After finishing speaking one by one, he shook his head and left. The last brother patted his shoulder and said earnestly, I know your Qian family is kind and values harmony. But what kind of person is Su Baozhu? Kefu, you can tell from your older brother. If you have some relationship with her, the good person will be injured in that bed. You should consider carefully. They don't want to. Seeing Qian Jin come over dejected, Su Baozhu roughly guessed what the situation was. Now that the answer was within her expectations, she didn't feel very disappointed. It's okay, if they don't go, the two of us can do it. Su Baozhu patted his shoulder and comforted him, this is a bit okay. We can't share it with them when the time comes. We can eat for a long time. Qian Jin smiled wryly and said, Sister, you're so optimistic. It's not a big deal yet. Think positively, Su Baozhu said. All right, then you go home and prepare. I'm also getting ready here. Let's set off tonight. Okay. After the money entered, Su Laohan walked out of the room. He frowned and asked with concern, "Girl, do you really plan to go?" "Well, Daddy." Su Baozhu sat down in the humanitarian courtyard and explained to him, "The value of this wild boar is high. If you can really take it down, you won't have to work so hard in the future. You won't be willing to eat anything and will consider everything for me and Zhu Yun, leaving it for us. Moreover, Zhu Yun's injury also needs to be healed. How can you eat bran and swallow vegetables every day?" "I know, but you see, De Cheng, such a sturdy person, has been injured like this. You are a girl from every family. You said if you have any situation, how can I explain it to your underground auntie? Don't worry, I'm prepared and will protect myself." "Can. It's okay, I promise I'll be back safely. If the situation doesn't work out, I'll run," Su Baozhu chuckled. Su Laohan wanted to say something more, which showed her interest. She didn't interrupt anymore, so she said, "Be careful. It doesn't matter whether you take it or not, the most important thing is your safety." Zhu Yun leaned against the door and listened to the conversation between the father and daughter. End of this chapter. Chapter 9. Climbing the Mountain. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The source has no content or has errors. Chapter 10. Wild Boar. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10. Wild Boar. Su Baozhu and Qian Jin exchanged a glance, took a deep breath, quickly dodged, and entered the nearby grass. The wild creature paused suddenly, and a pair of green eyes began to shoot. Su Baozhu and Qian Jin only held their breath and dared not move. It wandered around for a while without noticing, then began to turn back, dragging its massive body. Its pace slowed down a bit, and its movements were not as loud as before, but it was still very cautious and its eyes kept looking around. "I didn't expect this wild boar to be as sharp as a spirit. This won't work." She originally intended to take it while it was asleep and give it medication, but now it's clear that she miscalculated. If it returns to that hole, it not only cannot get close to itself, but may also become its plate of food. But if we act rashly now, it is obvious that Qian Jin also sees the current predicament. "Sister Baozhu, it's back. What should we do? Should we?" He gestured to communicate with her, and Su Baozhu hesitated for a moment, gesturing for him to remove the sleeve arrow from his back. After he followed suit, the person instructed him, "You hide here, I'll lead it over. Find the right time and shoot the arrow in your hand. This is too dangerous." Qian Jin shook his head, "In case." Su Baozhu's attitude was firm, "There are only the two of us here. If we want to take it, we must do it. She also knows the danger, but if she doesn't lead her, they won't be able to get close to it, so they won't be able to take the next step." Among the two, only Qian Jin had hunting experience and knew how to use this crossbow, so the safest way was for her to lure in him to fight. Remember, aim for the right moment, let's strive for one-time success. Although Qian Jin hesitated, he couldn't resist her and understood why people made such a choice, so he nodded and agreed. "Then be careful." Su Baozhu responded and immediately jumped out of the grass without any hesitation. The wild boar heard the commotion and suddenly turned back, running towards her. This is exactly what she wants. Su Baozhu led it towards the money and the two of them cooperated. The wild creature didn't think much, just kept chasing fiercely. Getting closer, just a little short. A little closer, a little closer. That's right at this moment. At the moment when the wild boar was about to launch a fierce attack on Su Baozhu, Qian Jin seized the opportunity and hit the sleeve arrow, which had been soaked in hemp, into the boar's neck. In an instant, both of them were stunned. In an instant, the wild boar suddenly started moving again. Failed. This may have caused Su Baozhu to panic, and he drew out the golden sword that Zhu Yun had given her for self-defense, intending to stab it. Qian Jin was also in a panic. He stood up from the grass and took down several arrows, continuously shooting towards this side. The wild boar was furious and roared angrily, its thighs several times thicker than both of their arms flapping, as if it wanted to counterattack them. However, it seemed like something was restricting its hands and feet, and it could not move any further. Moreover, its entire body softened and it fell to the side. Whew! Still useful, no failure. Su Baozhu breathed a sigh of relief, but did not completely relax. He immediately ordered Qian Jin, hurry up and bring the knife over. This drug is no more effective than current anesthetics, with only about a quarter of an hour's effect. They must resolve it within this quarter of an hour. The remaining thing is the advantage of money, and without saying much, he has already consciously moved and made a deep stab in the neck of the wild boar. In an instant, blood spurted out, and the wild boar struggled reflexively. The red blood splattered onto her and Qian Jin, but Qian Jin didn't stop either. He was too agile with his hands and feet, and the wild boar didn't feel any pain for long. He only snorted a few times before completely losing his ability to counterattack. At this point, the two could truly breathe a sigh of relief. Qian Jin touched the blood on his face and looked at the motionless wild boar on the ground, almost unable to believe it. Sister Baozhu, are we going to get rid of it now? What do you think? Su Baozhu wiped the blood off her face and stood up to look around. Now, the sky was beginning to show a white fish belly. The Peach Blossom Mountain is large and dense, and no one is sure if there are any other wild animals around here. So he said, let's hurry and get it down, or else when the day breaks, the living creatures in the forest will get up and cause trouble again. Hey! Qian Jin responded, got up and went to the surrounding area to chop down tree trunks and branches, and brought them back. The two of them worked together to make a simple raft, tied the wild boar up, and dragged it down the mountain. Taoji Mountain is not far from Huaihua Village. But this wild boar is also quite big. With the help of the two of them, it was already dawn after dragging it down. When they returned to the village, it was almost noon when the villagers were eating and resting in the field. Seeing the two of them panting and dragging a large object, they couldn't help but look over. Quickly, someone recognized that this was a wild boar that often came down from the mountain to waste their crops, and for a moment, they were both surprised and jealous. It's such a big thing, divided between two families, I'm afraid it will take a whole year without worrying about food. Miss Bao, are you two really going to fight? Su Baozhu's second aunt, Jiao Shi, usually dislikes her bad luck and is afraid that it will pass on to her daughter, causing trouble for others to follow her and not get married. She never takes the initiative to visit her house, even if she meets her on the road, she hides far away. But now that she sees such a good thing, her heart is itching and unbearable, so she thinks of using the guanxi system to give it a chance. Su Baozhu doesn't like her shrewd calculation. The abacus hit her face directly, so she couldn't help but say, it's not us, is it Auntie you? Jiao was speechless when she scolded her, and her heart suddenly became angry. However, for the sake of this wild boar, she forcefully suppressed it and continued to smile, saying, your aunt also cares about you. It doesn't mean anything else. Oh. Su Baozhu dragged on a long tone and spoke in a sinister tone, thank you for your concern, Auntie. However, as you can see, it's really inconvenient for us to chat with you in this situation. I'm sorry. It's okay, it's okay. Jiao Shi came over and said, you little girl from every family, how could you have so much strength? You've been exhausted all the way, haven't you? The sweat on this end, come on, give it to Auntie, Auntie will help you take it home. Regardless of whether Su Baozhu agreed or not, he wanted to come and take the hemp rope from her shoulder. No need, both Ajin and I have been dragging our way, and we are not short of these steps. Su Baozhu refused and looked at Qian Jin, gesturing to leave quickly. The Su and Qian families knew about their plans and were worried all night. They had been guarding the village entrance, and when they saw them coming back, they quickly welcomed them. As Su Lao Han approached, the first thing he saw was not the big pig behind him, but the blood all over her. His heart suddenly tightened and he said, "Girl, are you injured?" "No, no." Su Baozhu explained, "It belongs to this big pig." "That's good." Su Laohan breathed a sigh of relief, and Uncle Qian said, "Miss Bao, you've worked hard. Come on, give it to Uncle." Su Baozhu didn't hesitate and handed the rope to someone. This differential treatment made Jiao's face turn pale and he cursed loudly. "What's so amazing, isn't it just a pig? It's as if no one has ever eaten meat before. What's so proud of?" End of this chapter.